Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Hi, everybody. Welcome. This is going to be a little bit of a different episode here, and I have basically a general theme, and it just sort of course, worked out this way accidentally, I suppose, or perhaps not. But there seems to be, again, this particular thread that runs through a number of different education-related stories, and even, of course, geopolitical stories as well, where the truth always lies beneath the surface telling, so to speak, of whatever particular story is being told. That there's always a hidden agenda. That very rarely is it just the face value story that people are force fed essentially through their television or radio or talk radio or whatever it may be. That there's almost always something else going on. And again, this stretches, of course, through geopolitical, education, health-related issues, you name it. Again, even dating back to last week's COVID testimony and COVID shot testimony. The real hidden, of course, agenda in there is that they're still perpetuating the existence of COVID, when in fact COVID is not real. And they, of course, aren't even bringing that up, which, as one might expect, is the problem. So when, again, a Dr. Thorpe or a Dr. McCullough or all these other individuals, again, don't make mention of that it's even come out in court, that there's been no isolation of some virus called Corona-19 or Coronavirus-19 or COVID-19 or however you want to phrase it, even though they've openly admitted that it was created in a lab, which again, you would think if a person was consistently asking questions, they would arrive at the conclusion that if something is created in a lab, how do you get it into a person to then make them ill? You, of course, have to inject it into them. There's no other way. They didn't drink it. They didn't, accidentally fall on it. They didn't breathe any of it in. It was injected into individuals. And then, of course, it was mass produced across flu shots in 2019. And then individuals who took flu shots back then probably got it, and certainly in 2020, and then so on and so on. So the point that I'm going to bring up here is, again, because I have a number of different stories, specifically, again, all related to education by and large, is that whatever is really going on, as far as the truth is concerned, is not the face value story that we're told. There's always some other agenda, and again, they will distract you with a shiny object in one direction, while they, again, at the exact same time, are basically forcing through something else that's far more harmful and far more insidious. So, let me begin with this. Again, it's not education related, but it's just kind of to wet everybody's whistle regarding Jeffrey Epstein. This is a subject I haven't brought up with regularity, certainly not in a very long time, but I wanted to make mention of it now because it seems to fit. Last week, of course, or the week before, whenever it was, when Dan Bongino and Kash Patel were interviewed on Fox News about the Epstein files and all of that stuff. And the big takeaway from a number of individuals was, of course, certainly the black pillars were saying that nothing is being investigated, nothing's going to be done. They, again, agree that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. They've seen all the files. Trust us because we've seen all the files and he clearly killed himself. First of all, we know that him killing himself was the mainstream media's story at the time. What we also know is that at that time, there were endless individuals, even in the mainstream media, saying, why is it that all of these particular things happened in a particular order, and then he allegedly killed himself? Where, again, the security cameras stopped working outside of his cell, and the guards left their posts, and the room looked completely disheveled as if he had potentially been murdered or even escorted out of the cell by other individuals. Again, was he detained and was he inoculated or, put into submission and unconscious for the sole purpose, again, of getting him out alive to be in witness protection? Who's to say? But that right there is the scenario that I want to run through very quickly. So put yourself in the boots very quickly of Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, or anybody who is behind the information regarding Epstein and, of course, all of his clients, the paperwork, the money, all of it. You're not just talking about, of course, a child trafficker or again, a human trafficker. You're talking about international espionage here. And you're talking about, again, a blackmail ring that was massive, that stretched right through, again, celebrities, so to speak, and business owners, politicians, Mossad, CIA, you name it. All of these things. And like I said, again, business owners and even corporations, certainly Disney, with, of course, Ghislaine Maxwell's connections to that and their proximity to Little St. James Island and her being a licensed submarine driver and helicopter pilot, if I'm not mistaken, and a number of other things. So, again, put yourself in their shoes just very quickly while they're on Fox News and, again, working for the FBI and looking at these files. And then, of course, you have to examine more specifically, what is their motive here? Their motive, essentially, at this point, is to get people to not ask more questions. Because the less that people ask questions, the more likely they can conduct an interview or conduct an investigation or even a military tribunal without the public asking questions. Because what they're not going to do is they're not going to tell people that he was murdered. Why? If they say that Jeffrey Epstein was murdered in prison, then that opens up so many more doors as to, again, who murdered him. The who, what, where, when, why, and how instantly becomes more abundant. And this is not what they want during any kind of an investigation. Now, again, let's say he killed himself. Let's say that really happened. If he actually killed himself, who cares? They have all of the information necessary. They have the paperwork. They have flight logs. They have money moving around. They have all of the, again, technology from his properties. They have everything. They really don't need him. However, murdering him, and then, of course, keeping that a secret, like I just said, keeps people from asking more questions. But also, again, if he were murdered, then that opens the door to more guilt, of course, because why murder him? Well, you would want to murder him, of course, in an attempt to get him to not be in witness protection and to get him to, again, not talk to prosecutors or military tribunal officials or whomever to turn over any evidence or have, again, videotaped evidence of him pointing people out and saying this person was here on this day and this person was involved and so on and so on. So again, by having everybody believe that he's dead, certainly by his own hand, that squashes everything. Certainly in the view of the public. But they're also, again, not going to say that he was murdered by anybody because that opens up too many questions. The other thing, of course, and this is the kicker, this is the part where they're, of course, not going to make any mention of it because it would defeat the purpose of even having him in witness protection, is they would never say that he is, in fact, in witness protection. Again, that defeats the purpose of witness protection. The idea of witness protection is that you are a witness and you are being protected, whether people know it or not. So you lead people to believe that you're dead when you aren't, either by your own hand or by somebody else. Even though by saying it was by their own hand, that would keep things more quiet because there's no other suspects involved in anything. But again, by openly saying he's in witness protection, that would defeat the entire purpose. So they're not going to say that either. They're never going to come out and tell the public that because they don't have to. If there's an investigation going on and he is alive, then he was pulled out of that jail, if he was even in the jail, as a result of, again, concocting a story to feed the public to basically, again, squash the entire thing and say, well, yeah, we have footage and we have this technology and we have call logs and the whole thing and flight logs and everything else. But again, he's dead, so we're just going to keep moving forward with the investigation even with him dead. The investigation could go a whole lot faster if he were alive. And again, Trump was in charge at the time. Why would they send him to jail knowing that he could be a witness against the entire government, along with endless other people? That part doesn't make sense either. So my point is this, and again, I put this out on Gab just very quickly, and somebody immediately said that explanation is devoid of reality. It's actually not. Again, I uh, I hate to criticize the individual who said that, whoever that is, but it's actually not. It's actually probably one of the more plausible explanations. Because again, they're not going to tell you that he was murdered, and they're not going to tell you that he's in witness protection. The most viable explanation for them that keeps people quiet is saying that he killed himself. Now, we know that he didn't because the evidence doesn't point to that necessarily. It points to him either being murdered or, like I said earlier, him being escorted out. And that's more advantageous for anybody conducting an investigation, is that he's in fact alive. So part of witness protection, again, is tricking people into believing that they're dead when they're not. I'm repetitive on the issue already. But you get what I'm saying here, I think, is that whatever we're fed, regardless of the story, at face value, that face value explanation is not what's really going on. It's always something else. So now let me slide into education, and I'll continue to prove this point, I think, throughout the entire episode. And you're smart people. You're well aware of this. You know that this is the way that things operate. And again, if you've been investigating all of these different wavelengths of thought and dimensions of thought for a very long time, you're well aware of this. The normies aren't aware of this. I mean, they don't think multidimensionally about anything. It's not even conspiratorial per se. It's just critical thought. They just don't have the ability to critically think about anything. Right now, in the state of Texas, you have two competing stories taking place, and one of them has now overshadowed the other. And the one story regarding education or educational environments rather in Texas has certainly overshadowed the other on purpose. And it has to do with placing the 10 Commandments back into Texas schools, in particular public schools. Now, just very quickly again, regarding all of that, my opinion on that issue is that that is done to basically satisfy again sort of the Christian base of individuals who still send their children to public school. It's a feather in their cap. It's a way for them to basically cool the temperature and their thoughts and beliefs about the public school system. As if to say again, don't worry, the 10 Commandments are coming back in schools, so that's going to satisfy that portion of it for you. Therefore, please keep sending your children back because now the 10 Commandments is back in public school. To which I would ask, and you probably already know this, again, you're smart people, is do you really think that placing the 10 Commandments back in public school is going to fix the environment? Of course not. I don't think it's going to fix the environment in the slightest. It will empower some people. It will make a lot of course, the demonic individuals who work within these environments remarkably angry, which will, of course, create even more division than what's been created. I'm not against the 10 Commandments existing in schools. I'm not against the 10 Commandments existing everywhere. I'm all for it. But that's not really going to fix the problem. It's basically, again, an appetizer just to satisfy sort of the, general malaise of the I don't know. I don't even know how to categorize them. Individuals, again, who just, I think, keep sending their children back to these environments, expecting a little reward from time to time, and this just happens to be one of those rewards. But see, that story itself is the one that's overshadowing the more important one, which is that social media in Texas could be limited to only those who are 18 years and older. That it would quite literally be illegal for minors to be on social media. Now, I understand the back and forth debate on that too. Certainly when it comes to, of course, a school environment, because that's another dimension of and another wavelength of thought, rather. If you take away social media from minors, in particular today, are you helping them or are you hurting them? That's the debate. Now, among the awake, when asked that question, the awake would say, you're hurting them. Why? because when you hurt them by taking away social media, you're taking away the avenue of information that they can get on the real world that they exist, which breaks the matrix and sets them free. There's that avenue of thought. I tend to ride in that avenue because that's the one for me that carries the most weight. The counter argument to that is, again, you're talking about sort of the normie wavelength of thought when it comes to this, is that if you keep minors off of social media, then they will be, of course, happier, healthier, less addicted to their wireless device, paying attention in school more readily, and so on and so on. This right here should show people that this was probably a part of that nefarious plan from the start. This is why the enemy plays the long game. They allowed social media to exist, and cell phones specifically, as communication devices to exist among minors in school back when they did, which at this point was whatever it was, 15 plus years ago. Certainly, again, with the ability to text message, and then, of course, the advent of the internet being on a cell phone. When that happened, that was probably being done on purpose to create chaos, but also create more rules and regulations. And even, of course, abandon existing rules and regulations within school environments to, again, come back around and create more chaos. So now, because we've seen nothing but chaos in the environment, partially as a result of the use of those devices for nefarious reasons, and even for being used for good reasons, they're coming back around all these years later in an attempt to again make a law and sign a bill into law that ultimately says social media is no longer allowed to be used among minors at any time. In particular, of course, within school environments, because it's quote unquote a distraction and it's unhealthy for minors for a variety of reasons. Again, I don't doubt, nor do I question the unhealthy nature of social media among minors. I fully get it. I understand. It makes them focus on things that they don't need to focus on. It can increase the likelihood of depression, suicidal ideation, superficial behavior, materialistic behavior, self-image problems. The list is endless. I'll just put it that way. It's completely endless. But again, this is the Great Awakening. And once the Great Awakening gets rolling, which it's been rolling now for quite some time, 10 plus years, and now you attempt to again take away the device that has been a part of that Great Awakening for many minors, in particular, again, within educational settings, to where they can actually question the instruction that they're receiving. Well, that's not what government wants, regardless of how localized the government is. Government doesn't want minors becoming smarter and wiser than government. They don't want that. They don't want an awake populace. It is the thing that they fear the most. That's in endless Q posts also. You awake is the thing that they fear the most. So yeah, social media wakes people up. It's the whole TikTok debate. That was another perfect prime example. There's still people trying to again get rid of TikTok and censor it as much as humanly possible. Why? Because it's waking people up. On one hand, of course, they scream at the top of their lungs, in particular politicians during these House and Senate hearings in the United States, and they consistently say, well, it's a Chinese spy device. That's why we need to get rid of it, because it's spying on all of these minors. Your cell phone is a spy device. Your cell phone is spying on you. Your computer is spying on you. Everything is spying on you. If you're stopped at an intersection, there's a camera right in your face, right in your chops. If you walk into a store, you're on surveillance footage all of the time. You're being tracked constantly. They don't need an app to do it. It already is society. So that's not the reason. Again, the real reason is the one that is hidden. The real reason is the one that is never going to be explained. So again, the TikTok thing was just one example, but the Texas education debate of those two subjects going hand in hand within the news media, just pay attention to the one that the news media is showing you most often. And the one that they're not explaining right now is the one where, again, the state of Texas is seeking to make social media illegal for anybody below the age of 18. And then, of course, I fully understand, again, they bring up the pornography aspect of it. And they say, well, it's about limiting pornography among minors. That's quite possible, but that's not the real reason. The real reason is they don't want minors on Gab, Telegram, TikTok, BitChute, Rumble. They don't want them even on X. So when a state, again, takes into its own hands their own version of the law by limiting a company's ability to reach a certain person, then they're treating social media like they're treating alcohol and tobacco. Now, again, when it comes to any libertarian or certainly any conservative government lover, a person, again, who doesn't want government intervention, this is a bad move. And this looks bad. And it looks, again, like more totalitarianism and more controlling of behavior. Because, again, you're pulling even parental rights away from parents for their ability to say, I don't want my child on this platform. That's up to the parent. It's not up to government. Government's not supposed to be the parent. But that right there, again, I just wanted to bring that one example up because that right there is a perfect example of that very thing. Again, the 10 Commandments thing, it gives everybody, every Texas Christian who loves them some public school and loves that sports ball on Friday nights and all that other stuff. It gives them just a little taste to make them believe that the school environment is somehow better now because the 10 Commandments will be available again on school grounds for everybody to see, and this will magically again change the environment. It won't. It's as foolish, as a matter of fact, as, again, I'm not saying the 10 Commandments aren't important. That's not it. It's just up there as being as foolish as believing that when you move into a new school building, all good things are going to happen because the building is brand new. That's not true either. It's human behavior that you have to change. That's really the problem here. It's government you have to eliminate. That's the bigger problem as well. But when government is seeking to control the mind, because as I've been over before and as you know, that's the literal definition of the word government, mind control, then therein lies the real problem. That's why seeing between the lines and understanding the multidimensional wavelength of all of it is important. Now, of course, there's this example, the whole Harvard University debate. Again, this is another prime example of how the truth hides in what's not being discussed. It's 1 or 2 or 3 dimensions deeper, it's in the shadows, and it just hides a little bit lower, and right there is where you'll find the truth. I've been over this numerous times before, but I'm going to mention it again. Harvard University, Columbia University, all of these universities were designed to fail from their inception, just like the trade towers were built to ultimately be destroyed and come down. This was part of their construction. Just like these university settings, they were designed to ultimately be taken down by Marxism and communism. That was the point. The president of Harvard University is Jewish. Now, this right here is where it's going to be difficult for a normie to be able to grasp, because again, they don't have a firm grip of history, let alone, again, Khazarian Mafia, Jewish history, and all of it. These individuals are 100% fine ruling over the ashes of the very thing that they seek to destroy. You may recall that Claudine Gay, the, again, black woman who was originally the president of Harvard, was wrapped up in the entire, you're an anti-Semite, you're allowing pro-Palestinian students to harass Jewish students and intimidate them and engage in violent acts and all of that. That's what the mainstream media told everybody. That's what endless non thinkers believed at face value because that was the face value story. In my opinion, the real plan behind that was to usher in Alan Garber, who is again the now current Jewish president of Harvard. And yet, in endless truth posts, Donald Trump continues to call Harvard University anti Semitic. So, how is it that an institution could be called anti Semitic and you have a Jewish president? It's counterproductive to the entire argument that Elise Stefanik was having, again, in the halls of Congress, rather, and in the House of Representatives during all of those hearings with all of those presidents of all of those universities. Screaming at the top of her lungs at those presidents, "Are you anti Semitic? Do you hate Jews? Do you want them dead?" And blah, 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 and all of this other stuff. She can't do that now. It neuters that entire argument completely. You have a Jewish president. How is it that the university is anti Semitic? When he's the president and he could squash any debate that takes place on the university's campus, when the more debates, so to speak, or public protests or what have you, take place that are always again being targeted, so they say, toward Jewish students and Jewish faculty, only to then lose federal funding, only then again to lose the ability to allegedly have any and all foreign students attend. When again, I believe it's something like only 40% or less of the student population at Harvard are white. Or even, I should say, Americans, legal Americans. The rest are on student visas. But see, again, what people don't understand is that that was the entire purpose of that university, was to take it so hard left that it would cease to exist. And I should say that it would cease to exist at the hands of the individuals running it, regardless of their race and regardless of any political affiliation that they have, but allowing them again to rule over the ashes, because ultimately destroying it is the thing that they are 100% fine with. That if somehow they become outnumbered, they will profit all the way to it being completely incinerated. And this doesn't bother them, because that's exactly how a Bolshevik thinks. That's exactly how a communist thinks. They do not care that the very thing that they are carrying out will be the end of their placement or employment or existence as well. It doesn't get more demonic than that. But again, these are godless human beings. I mean, these people do not know Jesus. They are, again, they're satanic by nature, certainly by their own teaching. But that right there, again, is very difficult for people to understand, because, again, it should be rather confusing, even for somebody who's passively paying attention to this. How on earth can you call Harvard University anti-Semitic when their own president is a Jew? It doesn't make any sense. And the vast majority of the staff or faculty are probably Jewish, including administration. I'm not saying that there aren't individuals there who are not Jewish. There certainly are. Plenty of them are not Jewish, which, of course, therein lies some of the conflict as well. You'd be hard-pressed, I think, to find a follower of Christ attending Harvard University. It would not happen. The place is loaded with atheists. It's loaded with Muslims. It's loaded with individuals who are satanic. And it's just loaded with individuals that do not know a God. Or the God, I should say. They just don't know. And they just don't care. They're there for their own self-righteous, goals or whatever it is that they think that they're going to actually accomplish. But when Donald Trump, again, sends out a truth post saying we're going to take their federal funding, we've already taken billions away from them, and we're probably going to take that $3.5 billion and give it to trade schools, I'm all for that. In fact, what he's doing quite literally is trumping them, like in a game of cards. He's basically saying, oh, okay, You don't want to exist anymore. You're 100% fine ruling over the ashes. Well, here's what we're going to do just to piss you off a little extra. We're going to tell you what we're going to do with the money that we take from you, and we're going to give it to a thing that you cannot stand, which is trade schools, and passing that money across the nation to endless trade school. That's a beautiful thing. But you can see again how the face value story that people are told about Harvard is not true. When people are going, it's anti-Semitic and that's all that it is. No, it isn't. It's quite literally run by individual. Well, of course, Jews aren't Semites anyway. But with that aside, it's literally being run into the ground by individuals who happen to be Jewish, and they're using the participation of everybody to accomplish that because that's what they want. They would love. Again, you have to think like them, which is difficult, but you have to understand that they would love to destroy the very thing that they've been running and then blame it on someone else and get people to believe that for decades, if not centuries to come. Think of the Holocaust, after all. Didn't happen, completely fake, and yet look how they manipulated and concocted the entire story to then what? Play the victim of the very thing that they were behind, that they were involved in, which was their concoction of that story, to then profit from it all the way, from generation to generation to generation, while getting people to believe something that is not real. Again, I know it's confusing and I know it sounds messed up, but yeah, that's the whole point. It's designed to be confusing to confuse people. And it's also designed, again, for them to control things and profit from it the entire time, even if it means ruling over the ashes when there's nothing there. They'll stand on top of a pile of ashes and say that they accomplished the thing that they wanted because, yeah, that's what they want. They don't want it to exist anymore. What they don't understand is that we're fine with that. It doesn't bother me if Harvard doesn't exist. I've brought it up numerous times before that these institutions are laughable. They're the laughing stock of quote-unquote higher education, so much so that when you knock that house of cards over and you just flick over those few ace of spades or whatever, king of hearts or the higher cards, so to speak, that you end up realizing the entire thing is an illusion. That's why college and university life in general is being mocked very hard in today's society. Not even Charlie Kirk can save higher education. Ben Shapiro, Jordan Peterson, all of these pseudo-intellectual nitwits, all of these people believe that if they show up on a campus and they say a few things that they can actually save the campus from itself. No, you can't. In fact, all they're doing by even showing up and having any kind of a debate is proving that the institution no longer needs to exist. Therefore, they are facilitating its destruction, rather. And they're doing that, again, whether they know it or not. But they're not making the place look better when they give their lectures all over these campuses. They're making them actually look far worse. Again, with all of these weirdos that come up to the microphones and ask particular questions, or again, even the individuals who challenge them with more facts, and they make the person who is actually standing on stage, who is the assigned lecturer or guest speaker of that day, they're making them look foolish by even having, again, students come up to the microphones who know more than they do, by getting them to either not admit something, not say something that they wouldn't normally say because, again, they don't want to out themselves as being a fraud, like Charlie Kirk, of course, Ben Shapiro, Jordan Peterson, Michael Knowles, the rest of these people. They don't understand that they're all participating in this illusion, but by doing that, they're exposing the illusion and breaking it down piece by piece. I even have a piece of audio here just very quickly from Jordan Peterson that I want to play because I'm not a fan of his. I think he's a con artist. I think he's a borderline drug addict. And he's certainly one of these pseudo-intellectual individuals who overthinks everything instead of just relaxing a little bit. But either way, one of the overall points that I wanted to make when it came to moving these particular individuals around who allegedly run these institutions, and it even, of course, happens with politicians in government, is that those individuals are usually moved around to do one of two things: speed up its destruction of either a government or an institution, or save it and get rid of the riffraff and get rid of all of the bad people and bring it back to its original sort of well, certainly structure, but not philosophical structure, but just the bones of the actual place still existing, keeping the lights on, increasing enrollment, things of that nature, but ultimately, again, getting rid of the riffraff and that ideology. That's a very hard thing to do. It can be a tough thing to do, certainly with these entrenched institutions. But bringing in Alan Garber as the president, and he's going to be there until mid-2027. He's apparently slated to leave somewhere around then, and then they'll find, I don't know, some other Jewish individual to further run it into the ground. At least that appears to be the plan. He was brought in because Claudine Gay was not destroying the place fast enough. That right there, that tactic and that situation, whatever you want to call it, that ploy, that right there is a strategy that not many people consider, but that's something that goes on all of the time. Again, look at Governor Cuomo, for example. He was another perfect example. Governor Cuomo was brought in to destroy New York, and he did a pretty damn good job. But then someone pulled his card when it came to sexual harassment. And, of course, the entire COVID lie and his entire participation in that. So what did they do then? They said, Cuomo, you did what we asked, but now you've gone stale. The milk's gone bad. The peel is starting to mold. And now we got to put in somebody else who's going to speed up the process faster than you can, because things have slowed down to a pace that we don't like, and we want to continue to destroy this state quickly. So now we're going to bring in Kathy Hochul. And what did Kathy Hochul do? She showed up, and she put that bad boy into fifth gear, pedal to the floor, and she again sped up the ruining of New York State. Shots are mandatory for all K-12 students no matter what. You don't have a say, no exemptions allowed. She did that. That was a big, terrible move. Illegal aliens. Increasing the presence of illegal aliens all throughout New York City. That was Hochul. Hochul did that. See what I mean? They just take these people and they move them around, and they just do whatever they have to do to make sure that one individual, again, crushes things faster than the person who is already holding the position, who is crushing it fast, but not as fast as they might like. Or again, they overstay their welcome, or again, the milk goes bad, and they just lose favor, and they need a fresh face in there to control, essentially. Now, again, let me give you this other example, and this has to do, of course, with the business of debates. But you've heard me bring it up before, that debating is usually where you have two seemingly opposing sides, so they would lead everybody to believe. Again, just polar opposites, going back and forth, trying to convince one or the other that they're wrong, when in fact, they're probably both wrong, to some extent. Or someone is potentially more right than the other. And I mean, by right, I mean more correct. There's been this little series that's remarkably stupid in my humble opinion. It's this debate series that takes place, and Charlie Kirk did it, and Ben Shapiro did it, and Michael Knowles, and it's basically all the Daily Wire numbskulls. And they basically sit at a table, and then there's a timer there on this table, and then of course there's a chair right across from them at the same table, and then a circle of chairs around them, and then one at a time they sort of, I don't know, very self-importantly raise their hands very quickly, like they need to be the first one to debate or the next one to debate the person who again is sitting there as sort of this arbiter of truth and the all-being, all-knowing. It's very it's not good. It's not a good look for the person who's hosting the debate, so to speak, or being debated against, with these other individuals sitting in the circle. So in this last video with Jordan Peterson, he's sitting at this table and it's, again, basically debating individuals that call themselves atheists. Now, my take on atheism, of course, by definition, is that it means that they don't have enough evidence to lean toward one so-called religion or another, or one God or another. They're basically lazy. That's it's kind of the easiest definition for atheists, is that they are lazy and they're not paying attention. They're not paying attention to their surroundings. They're not paying attention to themselves. And they're certainly not paying attention to their own path and where their own path has taken them. And then some of them, of course, continuously ask questions, and then some of them don't. So in this particular back and forth, though, what's interesting is that all sides get exposed, and both sides, so to speak, get exposed for not knowing. Jordan Peterson's one of these individuals, again, who can arrive at some hard conclusions, but he leaves everything sort of out in the ether, and always can be questioned, and that's okay. Well, there are some things that have been proven. And for those who follow Christ, Jesus, of course, you know that these things have been proven. That there is no way that certain things happen to certain individuals a particular way without the hand of God on them, following them, showing them particular things in a number of other scenarios. Not trying to get preachy necessarily. I'm just trying to say everybody has their own path, but that path is given to us by Him. So what happens in this quick little exchange, which you're going to hear, and it's the one exchange that's really come out of this entire debate, because again, the people on the left hate Jordan Peterson, but what they don't know is that people on the right don't like him either. That they're not a fan of him either, because he's a hypocrite. He's a walking, talking hypocrite. He'll claim that he wants the truth and always wants to find it, but he swears to God that the Holocaust happened and that all Germans did was just slaughter Jews. He believes this. That of course, is not true. None of that happened. But when you present him with the actual truth, he ignores it. Therein lying his, of course, hypocrisy. The point that I'm making is that this is not face value. The real answer lies, again, in a deeper dimension from a completely separate angle. In the debate, you're expecting one side to win or the other side to win. As it turns out, in most debates, both sides typically lose something. And then in this particular exchange, this atheist, of course, has already lost because he's an atheist, which means, again, he's lazy and not paying attention to his surroundings, his own life, and everything else I just said. However, he also exposes Jordan Peterson as being the hypocrite that he is. So give this exchange a listen here in 3, 2, 1.
Hey, Dr. Peterson.
How you doing?
Danny, nice to meet you.
What's your name?
Danny.
Danny.
You say atheists worship things or people or places, whatever. Can you be very clear about your definition of worship again?
Attend to, prioritize, and sacrifice for.
Okay, that's it. That's your understanding of worship.
Well, I could flesh it out, but that'll do for the time we have.
Okay. Do Catholics attend to Mary?
Yes.
Okay. So do they fit that description of worship?
Yes.
So you would say Catholics and other people that revere Mary, like the Eastern Orthodox tradition, worship Mary.
Well, they might not put her in the highest
But
place.
you would put it that way.
No.
You just said it. Now you're taking it back.
There's
now?
still a hierarchy.
Okay, there's a hierarchy, but within
There's something at the top.
All right, you can worship things
Mary
below.
is quite a ways up the hierarchy, but not at the top.
Let's go over your definition of worship again. What's your definition of worship?
Attend to.
Attend to.
Prioritize.
Do Catholics
sacrifice for.
Do Catholics attend to? Do they prioritize Mary over all other human beings?
No, I didn't say overall, did I? I didn't add that to my definition.
You understand?
I said there was a hierarchy as well.
You attend to
So you can attend to something trivially, or you can attend to it deeply.
Okay, now you're adding stuff to the definition. But your original definition...
I added the hierarchy part at the beginning.
Are you
just
familiar?
didn't understand it.
Are you familiar with the Immaculate Conception?
Why is that relevant?
Because you go to a Catholic church, don't you? Or you've attended recently. You're interested in Catholicism, aren't you?
Sure,
All right. Are you familiar with their doctrines?
somewhat.
Okay, you're
Their
familiar.
doctrines are very
How do they
deep.
regard Mary?
Why are you asking me that?
Because you're a Christian.
You say that. I haven't claimed that.
Oh, what is this? Is this Christians versus atheists?
I don't know.
You don't know where you are right now.
Don't be a smartass.
Well,
and I mean
either you're a
'cause I
Christian
won't
or you're
talk
not.
to you if you're a smartass.
Either you're a Christian or you're not. Which one is it?
I could be either of them, but I don't have to tell you.
You don't have to tell me. I was under the impression
private.
I was invited to talk to a Christian. Am I not talking to a Christian?
No, you were invited to.
I think everyone should look at the title of the YouTube channel. You're probably in the wrong YouTube video.
You're really quite something. You are.
Aren't I? But you're really quite nothing. Right? You're not a Christian.
Okay, I'm done with him. Hi there.
Hi, nice
What's
to
your
meet you.
name?
Gerard.
Hello, Gerard.
Nice to meet you, sir. So you said that worship is when you prioritize and sacrifice for something, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a hierarchy in there.
Sure. So I prioritize and sacrifice for my wife more than I would prioritize and sacrifice for a random person on the street, right?
Probably. Yeah.
Presumably. Do I worship
I don't know.
my
I've
wife?
seen some pretty bad marriages.
Assuming a good marriage, are you saying I worship my wife?
I'm trying to define worship.
That's what I'm asking. So prioritize and sacrifice. I do
the
those
higher
things.
it is in the hierarchy, the more what you're doing is akin to worship. But even in your
Okay.
trivial acts of attention, you're prioritizing and partaking in worship, even if you don't know it.
So I am
And it's
prioritizing.
partly, well, with regard to your wife, say. So why do you value your wife? You do value your
Yes,
wife.
I love
Okay.
her. So I
Right.
prioritize and I
Okay.
sacrifice for her.
Right. So that's within the confines of love, let's say.
Sure.
What else does it serve?
What else does what serve?
Your love in your marriage?
I mean, I'm married to my wife because I love her. That's
Yeah.
also why I prioritize and sacrifice for her.
Right.
I certainly wouldn't think I worship her, and I don't think anyone else would make that.
I'm
Are you
trying to
making
make
that
a
claim?
definition.
Okay.
Yeah, that there's a hierarchy of attentional priority. And as you move up it or down it, depending on whether you think about it as a pinnacle or a
Mhm.
foundation, you move more towards worship. Right.
Okay.
So even the small things, give you an example. Imagine you go on a date.
Mhm.
Well, imagine that your aim is a long-term relationship
Sure.
like a marriage. Okay. Now imagine that your aim is short-term sexual gratification. Your pattern of attention is going to vary during the date, depend on your ultimate end.
Of
That's
course.
the hierarchy. The way that you attend to your wife is dependent on your ultimate aims, even if you don't know it.
So at what point is it worship? Because it sounds like you're saying
It
worship is
shades.
almost a spectrum, right? Or it's not a binary. It's not a.
It's kind of like that's a good
So
question.
when
It's
is
like
when is it worship as opposed to just I love my wife?
the closer you get to the top or the bottom, the more it's more like
How close
worship.
to the top? Because I don't think I worship anything. And if you're saying I have to hit a certain threshold for it to be worship, it is possible I don't worship anything then, right?
It's not possible that you don't worship anything.
What do I worship?
Because you wouldn't attend a love.
So you think I
Apparently.
worship love?
Do you attend in consequence of love? See,
do.
I'm trying to define something. What
Right.
do you mean worship? I told you what I meant.
So
What do you mean?
So I mean, something you worship is something that you have a reverential view for in a manner in which you believe it to be above and beyond normal things you like. Like you
So do you
presumably
have
worship
that
God.
attitude towards your wife?
I have that
Do you
attitude.
privilege her compared to other women?
Of course, I privilege her compared to
Okay.
other women, but I don't worship her. Nor does
Well-
she worship. Nor does she worship me.
By the definition you just offered, yes, you do. Because you just offered a definition that involved prioritization and elevation.
And thinking that she is divine above and beyond what a normal natural
women.
phenomenon can be. Not other women, no, beyond any human being could ever be. I will prioritize her over
See,
any
you're
other human,
making
but I
the
don't
assumption.
think that she is some
You're making the
supernatural being.
assumption that only the thing at the top or the bottom has anything to do with worship. And I'm saying that's not true. It's a hierarchy of prioritization. And there's either something at the top or the bottom, depending on the metaphor, or you're fragmented and confused. Those are the only options.
So let's say
You're
I'm
either going in many directions
okay.
or you're going in one direction.
So let's suppose I'm fragmented and confused. Then you
Yeah.
agree I don't worship anything.
No, then you worship multiple things.
How? So what's the threshold when it's worship? Right? I prioritize a lot of stuff.
I said that the closer you get to the pinnacle or the
How
closer
close?
you get...
Can you give me some sort of metric? How close do I got to get to this pinnacle?
Do you know the difference between cheap literature and deep literature?
Yes.
Okay, that's the same issue. And how do you distinguish between them? What's the difference between cheap and deep?
I mean, it's really an opinion-based thing, right?
Is
I mean,
it? So it's just an opinion that
plenty of-
Dostoevsky is better than a porno magazine.
I've spoken to people who think To Kill a Mockingbird's cheap. It's one of my favorite books. So, I mean, people will differ on opinion.
Just because people are stupid about things doesn't mean that their opinion is valid.
That's certainly true. I agree with that.
Okay, well, do you think there is a hierarchy in literary quality?
I think that there is a hierarchy to an extent in literary quality, but I think once you get to a certain threshold, it is just opinion. Like, I agree. Dostoevsky is better than a porno mag, but is F. Scott Fitzgerald better than Ernest Hemingway? I don't know.
Yeah, fair enough. Why do you think that?
Because of what a book is, what literature is. Dostoevsky, he follows what literature is the purpose of more than the porno magazine does.
Good. Well,
so it's about purpose and definition.
Sure. Let me give you an analog then.
Okay.
The depth of worship is analogous to depth of literary significance. And the closer you get to what's deep, the more religious and worshipful your practice. And maybe you don't know what's at the bottom, but something needs to be, or you're confused.
Well, so to use your analogy, then how deep do I have to go for it to be worship? Do I have to be Catcher in the Rye? Do I have to be War and Peace? Or
it depends on what you're seeking for.
I'm seeking to know whether I worship something. You've claimed I worship something, and I want to know.
If you want to have a deep and meaningful life, then you have to go all the way to the bottom or the top. And insofar as you're capable of doing that, because otherwise you'll be fragmented and miserable and anxiety-ridden and hopeless.
So I have to worship something to have a meaningful life. And if
there's no difference between those two things.
Okay.
They're the same thing.
So if I don't worship anything, my life will not be meaningful, correct?
Well, that's the definition of nihilism.
Okay. So if I'm a nihilist, I don't worship anything.
That's true. And then you...
okay. You just said everybody worships something. I think you just agreed there is a class of people that doesn't.
Well, they're incoherent in their worship. And hand gestures like that aren't going to help.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
Look, if you're incoherent and fragmented and aimless, which is what happens if your objects of worship are unstructured and chaotic, then you're going to be anxiety-ridden and without hope. That happens. That's a technical argument.
But there's happy nihilists.
Oh,
how do you explain that there are happy nihilists then? Because you just said
the mere fact that you state that there are happy nihilists doesn't make it true. Like, what's your evidence? How do you measure nihilism, and how have you associated it with happiness? And what's your definition of happiness? And have you compared them to religious people? Because if you do, by the way, it's clearly the case that religious people over the long run have better mental health. It's a well-documented fact in psychological literature.
Sure.
So your claim is just a claim. It doesn't stand on anything.
So you disagree with the claim that there exists even one happy nihilist?
I didn't say that.
Okay, would you agree there exists at least one happy nihilist in the universe?
It's not a question that has any meaning as far as I'm concerned, because it depends on what you mean by happy, and it depends on the duration that you're trying to calculate over. Now and then there's probably some deluded soul who thinks he's a nihilist who's momentarily pleased with himself. But as a long-term strategy to deal with the future, to get along with yourself and with others, it's sadly lacking. That's why Nietzsche warned that when God died, as he announced in 1850, that people would be flooded with pointless, anxiety-ridden, hopeless nihilism. And that was what would attract them to for example, to the false gods of totalitarianism, which is exactly what happened. Because everybody worships something, even atheists who think they don't.
Aren't there unhappy Christians or devoted believers? So worshiping something is neither sufficient nor necessary for happiness then?
Well, terrible things can come your way regardless, and that does happen. But it's the case that even when circumstances become deeply troublesome, that how you're oriented makes a big difference. So I'll give you an example. So the book of Job deals with the issue of unfair suffering. So Job is a good man who has everything taken away from him in the most painful possible way.
To settle a bet, right?
With Satan, yes. And so he makes the axiomatic presumption that he won't lose faith in himself or in the spirit of being itself. And that helps him remain calm and forward-looking through his time of trial.
Doesn't he absolutely curse God?
No. His wife tells him to do that.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the thing. Of course, I played the first one, and I wanted to play the second one in its entirety also, just because, again, I wanted you to hear an entire exchange that was a little longer than the first. Again, in the first, the young kid calls out Peterson rather obviously, and says, since you've studied Catholicism this entire time, why don't you just want to answer a basic question of the Immaculate Conception, what that means and whatever? And then Peterson goes, well, why are you asking me? And then, of course, the entire exchange develops from there. So again, to be in Peterson's shoes, he's the pseudo-intellectual who, knows a great deal and wants to share that with people, but when asked a question, he doesn't want to answer it. And then, of course, what does he do? He resorts to name-calling by calling him a smartass. That's a bit low, but at the same time, the other kid is apparently an atheist, and he's engaging with other individuals who are atheists, and then it just devolves from there. The exact same is true with the second person. Then they start nitpicking, of course, the word worship and what does that mean, and all of this other stuff. And they were both contradicting one another and themselves. That was the interesting part. You probably heard Jordan Peterson in the second exchange. He openly said something about how if an individual doesn't exhaust the truth on a given subject all the way to its bitter end, then they're doing themselves a disservice. Well, that's arguably the largest hypocritical part about Jordan Peterson. But it's the hypocritical part about everybody in that room. Which means, what's the difference between any of them? What's the debate between any of them? There isn't one. Again, it's just this self-important social experiment that they think creates, some agreement, some disagreement, but ultimately everybody just kind of looks foolish at the exact same time. So, I don't know. It's an odd scenario. It's an odd whatever it is, a little show that they do. It's apparently called Surrounded. I guess that's what the actual definition of the thing is, but it's just weird. And again, I don't think it does anybody a really great service necessarily. It's just confusing. And people get caught up in the semantics of things, and then, of course, they expose themselves as not wanting to discuss certain things that they either don't understand, but also highlights their hypocrisy in not wanting to understand more. Because again, they're too hung up on the face value kind of stuff. And of course, that's, I should say, the larger point and the biggest flaw with all of them is their inability to dive down to the most knowing level of a particular subject. Again, for Jordan Peterson to reference the Holocaust like it actually happened is absurd. For the individual sitting in the circle to basically, again, be so self-important and I'm not sure what other words. There are numerous words to describe them, but self-important is certainly one of them, to believe that they're in charge of everything and that they can control everything, and that God doesn't exist because they haven't found any so-called proof. Well, that just means that they're willfully choosing to not look for it. They're willfully choosing to not even feel it, or think about it, or reflect on it, or even ask. I mean, that right there, for anybody who knows Jesus, knows that all you have to do is ask, and he will show you particular things. He will introduce things to you and open up your mind and your eyes to endless things. But a person even, again, has to ask. But they don't even know that. They just think that if it doesn't come to them naturally by their own, by their own so-called selfish effort, then if it doesn't exist, well, then that proves them right, that none of that exists. It's a bit odd. But for a little levity here, before I play another clip here, proving again the hidden agenda in certainly education aspects, let me play comedian Pete Holmes very quickly. Pete Holmes is a Christian. He knows Jesus, and he makes jokes about, again, individuals who don't. And I have a quick little clip here that I also put on Gab. I think it's a perfect time to play it. So give Pete Holmes a listen here in 3, 2, 1.
Some people think God created the universe. Some people think nothing created the universe, which is the funniest guess. And the nothing people make fun of the God people. They say God doesn't exist. I'm like, okay, maybe. But you know what definitely doesn't exist? Nothing. That's the defining characteristic of nothing, is that it doesn't exist. So what are we talking about? Either you think it's God, something you can't see, touch, taste, photograph, and science can't prove, or you think it's nothing, something you can't see, touch, taste, photograph, and science can't prove. But I think we can all agree, if your nothing sometimes spontaneously erupts into everything, that's a pretty goddamn magical fucking nothing, you guys. And ask the nothing people, what happens when you die? They'll tell you, nothing. You go into nothing. I'm like, you mean you merge back with your creator? That's heaven, bitch.
He's got a point, and again, pointing out people's lack of understanding and their own hypocrisy is rather easy to do. All you have to do is just hit play. That's about it. Just hit play. And just let them continue again to say what they say, and they'll come right back around and kick themselves right in the ass, and they don't even know it. They'll blame it on somebody else, when in fact it's just them. Let me give you another education example here. Cicely sent this my way from New Mexico. Again, 51st state in education when it comes to education, quote unquote, in America. This is the face value story, but what do you think is really the reason? It's titled, University of New Mexico Student Fees Will Increase for the 25-26 year as school looks to bolster athletic funding. So do you really think that they're increasing tuition at the university just to support their sports program? What are all of the reasons why a university would need to increase tuition? Give this a quick little listen here from their news outlet, KRQE News, in 3, 2, 1.
Of New Mexico is looking for ways to bring more funding into their athletic programs, and they're doing it by making students pay more money in student fees to make it happen. News 13's Chandler Farnsworth spoke to some UNM students about the decision.
Next year, University of New Mexico students will be footing the bill when it comes to increasing funding for athletic programs.
I think that's pretty ridiculous.
I do see the value of school spirit, the school spirit that sports supply.
Earlier this week, UNM's athletic director Fernando Lovo asked the Board of Regents to increase student fees by $45 each semester for the 2025-2026 school year.
We currently are about $1 million to $1.5 million deficient in our overall operational budgets, which forces us to fundraise for travel, equipment, nutrition, things that are basic operational needs for our student athletes to compete at the highest level.
Did you guys even know this is happening?
I had no idea until now.
That's a total increase of $90 for the year. The athletic director argued the university needs this money to financially compete with other Mountain West sport programs.
There's no good solution to this other than giving you some more money so we can take care of those kids. And I know it's the answer a lot of people like to hear.
However, the state legislature already increased athletic funding for the upcoming year by $3.2 million. And that's not the only price rise. Regents also approved an additional $60 increase per semester for a total of $120 for the 2026-2027 school year. As it stands, students already pay more than $100 in student fees that go directly to sports.
I think any raise in tuition is ridiculous because I think before UNM can even try to make a case to raise any tuitions, they need to be completely transparent with what they're currently spending their money on.
In the grand scheme of things, with what we're already paying, it's kind of like a drop in the bucket.
According to the university, the increase will generate more than $1 million for sports for the upcoming school year, and an additional $4 million for 2026 and 2027.
It's tough right now, especially in the current funding environment from the federal government, to ask students to pay more. That isn't going to necessarily go to academics.
Chandler Farnsworth, KRQE News 13.
News 13 reached out to UNM and its athletics department on Thursday for further comment about the increase. No one was available to speak.
Again, you can take a guess as to the real reasons here, I think. It has to do with lower enrollment. It has nothing to do with needing more money for athletics. However, if you have lower enrollment, you're going to have less money for not just athletics, but you're going to have less money for every other thing that you're attempting to do at that university or any university. So again, why the lowered enrollment? We know those answers, and there are multiple answers. But they, of course, don't know what the answer is. So they sell this line to the public that, our athletic program needs to exist, and we can't imagine having a university without an athletic program, and they need more money, so what's an extra $40 to $45 added on to tuition per student, and that would certainly increase the amount of, money available for that particular program. That's That's not the real reason why. Again, these very institutions themselves participated in the reasons for the lower enrollment. They forced shots on people that hurt and killed them. They forced shots on students, of course, made it mandatory for X amount of months, if not years, in order to attend. None of them said no to any of that, thinking that that was beyond suspicious and potentially deadly or poor for anyone's health. They immediately said yes. They're reaping what they sow as a result of it. Even the staff members bought into it. Some of them are probably dead as well. Of course, that's not being widely reported. The number of deaths among teaching staff at colleges and universities all across the United States, when it has to be massive. That number has to be massive. At Miami University alone, they've lost at least a handful of professors, at least. And those are just the ones that I've covered on the show over the last few years. Again, it's just one location. So if that's happening all over the nation, certainly at bigger universities where even they were forcing 3 shots on people in order to even work there, or even attend, even as a graduate student, those people have to be dead and gone also too. Or at the very least, remarkably sick or maimed. But that's the real reason for the money grab. That's the real reason for the fundraising. That's the real reason for tuition increases. It's because you don't have enough people showing up, because there aren't enough people showing up because of course, all the past abuses that you inflicted on individuals from a medical standpoint. There's also this, of course, which has to do with the awakening of the American populace. They're waking up to the university environment. They're waking up to university life, and they know that they want nothing to do with it. I've gone all over again many of the reasons why that's the case certainly now, and why it's an obsolete environment. It doesn't need to exist anymore. It doesn't require people's participation in order to be successful, or get a job, or start a business, or work for a corporation. If you want a college degree, you can get it online. It carries the same weight. It'll cost you less, you'll graduate faster, and you won't be in debt. But people are determined, again, to just redo the same thing that either their parents did or their other ancestors did by, again, living with strangers, attending a brick-and-mortar university, and repeating that entire cycle of brainwashing over and over and over again, generation after generation, and it's not necessary. So this is happening again, those kinds of money grabs and that kind of potential money laundering, which, let's face it, $1 million won't be all they get, and $1 million isn't going to go straight into their athletic program. It'll get divvied up and somebody will get a little taste off the top, and that's usually the way that goes. But again, more and more people also aren't donating to these institutions either. And it's not just because they're wanting to keep their own money because of quote-unquote inflation. It's because they don't want to waste their money on these institutions anymore. They've betrayed them. And the individuals who maybe, again, used to attend are not so-called alum anymore or donating alum. They just don't care. They're realizing, again, that these institutions sold them a boat full of lies. And now that they've, of course, gotten older and they realize this, they're looking right back at them and saying again, why on earth would I give them a single red cent? They didn't earn it. They betrayed me. They betrayed our trust. They betrayed everything. They didn't teach us about the real world. That's not what went on in these institutions. Again, more people are learning. This is a good thing, but this is what happens when people learn and they stay away from those kinds of businesses. They quite literally vote with their feet and they just stop shopping there. They stop paying for your product and they won't even donate to your product anymore. Who can blame them? I certainly don't. But make no mistake, again, that face value story is not the real explanation. The real explanation, as we know, is certainly deeper than that. Now, I have one last thing, and this is interesting too. And in fact, this was sent to me after the last episode, and it has to do, believe it or not, with the high school graduation that happened here in the town where I live, and how at least one student was excluded from the high school graduation for rather unethical reason. But again, I'm going to get into this more specifically too, because again, I find this interesting, but there's lots of motives behind this as well. keeping in mind, of course, that the school district is just filled with assholes, and this is exactly what they would do. So here's the Facebook post, and this was on a local Facebook channel here in town, and it says the following. It says, quote, it says, Talawanda School District, I have lost all respect for you. Not letting my little brother walk across the stage today because he had mandatory work this morning and could not attend the practice walk this morning. He wasn't even aware of the practice due to him graduating early. This is heartbreaking. After all of his hard work, period. And then it says, I love you and I'm so proud of you, Patrick. And then it says, to add, it says, Patrick officially graduated in October of 2024 and hadn't been to school since, so he wasn't getting regular announcements from the school. He can't get into his school Gmail, so he had no idea about this practice, quote unquote, before graduation. He isn't a big social media user by any means, and when he said that he had no idea about the practice and that he attended work, they said there was nothing that they could do about it. He can't walk, and that the info about grad practice was posted all over social media. But he's joining the military in July. We are very proud of him, unquote. And then they took a picture of him sitting on a picnic table during graduation, basically with his back to the graduation, essentially. So, first of all, let me bring this up from a number of different angles. It's rather well known, and I've certainly brought this up, again, both as a personal example to me, but also something that I witnessed when I taught school, is that high schools and school districts hate it. They absolutely hate it when a student figures out the system and graduates early. And this individual clearly graduated in practically 3 years. Again, they theoretically left in October and never returned because they didn't have to, because they had enough credits, and that was the end of it. Chances are he probably graduated the year before and then came back starting to take a class that he maybe thought he still had to take when in fact he didn't, and then he ended up dropping out because he didn't have to take the class, and then he just theoretically graduated early and stopped attending school. That's pretty badass. Again, good for him for graduating in theoretically 3 years, because technically almost every high school student can. The other thing, of course, that schools don't like is they don't like self-driven, self-motivated human beings. They hate them, as a matter of fact, because schools are government. So schools love to be able to control individuals because, of course, they themselves as school employees are controlled and brainwashed. And they don't want students or their own employees not brainwashed and not controlled. They want them to conform. They want them to all do exactly the same thing at the same time. Everybody dressed the same. Everybody graduate exactly the same time. Don't you dare think about graduating early. And if you do, we're going to keep information from you because, well, we want to make it look like it's your fault and all of this was your fault and you should have known better. And, well, we told people, but if you didn't pay attention, then that's your fault. Now, again, I wouldn't put it past the school and the administration to just be assholes about the whole thing and purposefully not tell him. Certainly they could have. They could have sent a letter home knowing full well that he hadn't formally walked and that he did in fact graduate early theoretically, but that this walking ceremony is one that he would be a part of. They could have sent a letter home to everybody saying, here's when the practice is going to take place. This is the day it's going to take place. If you're busy doing other things, just let us know in advance. And then if you don't attend the practice, don't worry about it. Just follow along with the person who's walking in front of you and you'll see how everything operates. Because this old lie that continues to exist to this day, which is still a lie, that if you have to, that basically if you're going to walk during a high school graduation, then you have to participate in the practice the same day. Or even again the day before. I remember when I was in high school, they did the same thing. They threatened everybody and they said, if you don't show up to the practice the day before, then you're not going to be able to graduate. Well, fuck you. That's number one. It's got nothing to do with anything. Because basically all you're saying is that, again, you can't pay attention to your surroundings and just play follow the leader. And that you can't, again, walk in a line and see what the person in front of you is doing. It's not difficult. It isn't brain surgery. He could have easily shown up with a cap and gown, sat in his assigned seat if he wanted to, and then that would have been the end of it. But they either purposefully excluded him because he graduated early, or, they just didn't want to include him. Now, the flip side of that coin is also this. If he really wanted to walk, and it was something that really mattered to him, he could have very easily just driven up to the administrative building and asked them, when is graduation? Is there a practice? What are the rules, and when is it all taking place? Because I graduated in October, but I haven't walked yet, but I'm due to walk, and I'm qualified to do so, so when is all of this taking place? They would have to tell him, because he has a right to know. And they would have to have all of that in writing, because that's what an organization should do. Now, did he do that part of it? I don't think so. It certainly doesn't seem like he did. But if he really wanted to walk that badly, he could have. So, essentially, it's this. He got an interesting lesson in the bureaucracy, but he also got an interesting lesson in what happens if he doesn't do his own due diligence and find out the answers to particular things on his own. You can't expect government to tell you what it is that you want government to tell you. Or you can't expect them, again, to tell you something that you specifically want to hear. Sometimes you have to figure it out for yourself, even if that involves asking government. So, of course, he got a nice lesson in the bureaucracy and the lack of communication that takes place, but he also got a very interesting lesson in, again, what happens when he doesn't participate in that communication willfully on his own as a result of his own initiative. Now, if he's entering the military, to that I say Godspeed. No more wars, we're not interested in it, but he's also going to get a crash course in bureaucracy. And it certainly does exist at the military level, and he's going to find that out too. So again, a lot of lessons to be learned here in this time of year, no doubt about it, but he'll be a better person for not walking. Because again, it doesn't matter. In the grand scheme of things, it just doesn't matter. He's going to look back on graduation day and say, yeah, I graduated, but they wouldn't let me walk. And maybe he'll say, I could have taken the initiative to make sure that I had all my ducks in a row, but I didn't do that either, but whatever. In the grand scheme of things, he's going to hopefully see it as being as insignificant as it actually is. But the thing that people have to keep in mind too, in particular with the local school district where I live, is they are this stupid. They are this evil. They would have purposefully had it outside in the rain on purpose just to piss people off. They would do that because that's who they are. That's the kind of people that run this school district. Like I said in the last episode, they could have very easily had it inside and no one would have gotten wet, but they didn't do it that way. They purposely had it outside during a rainstorm, probably just again to piss people off and to make everybody angry. Well, it worked. And again, if that's their motivation, then these are institutions that no one should be a part of. So, this is the hidden agenda here. This is what goes on with all these different education stories and all of these back and forths and these debates and whatever else. You can look at one side, you can look at the other, but then you have to look right down the middle and then below the middle. And then you'll find the real answer as to what's really going on and the real motive. And it's never what's at face value. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening, and I will catch you on Friday. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.